What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode here on the Architect Network. Today, we're going to be continuing on our discussion around startups and entrepreneurship in the AEC space. And we're going to bring on one of the most prominent startups there is at the moment, Speckle. And we've got Dimitri and Matteo, who are co-founders of Speckle. And we're going to be talking to them about their journey as engineer architects to now startup founders. Also, their journey raising money and developing their technology. Last episode, we had their investors on from Fundamental, and so it makes sense to bring them on today to talk about that journey. If you haven't checked out Speckle before, I highly recommend to check it out. It's an amazing platform where you can basically import your data from one platform to another. So it's essentially an incredible interoperability tool. It's also an amazing collaboration tool, so you can work with different people in the industry and also, access your models online from anywhere. And it also has this third component, which is the computational aspect, which we'll delve into on the podcast. But it's really interesting stuff. We're going to be talking to them about their technology, raising money, startup life. This should be an interesting one. As always, if you like this episode, give us a like and a subscribe, share it with your colleagues. The more people we get supporting the channel, the bigger the guests we can get onto the podcast. So thank you for all the support so far. But without any further ado, let's jump into it and talk to Matteo and Dimitri. This video is brought to you by Architect Network and our online platform of courses where you can learn from world-class architects working in some of the practices that you can see in these videos. You can learn Grasshopper, Revit, Rhino Inside, Twinmotion, and some of our new courses on AI, and lots more courses that we're delivering over the next year. So please, if you like this video, check out our courses in the link below so we can keep bringing you more content like this. All right, that's it. We're live. Dimitri, Matteo, thank you so much for joining, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Ollie. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, great to be here.
Yeah, it's like I was saying, I think it's a great time to get you guys on. We have just started this new theme of kind of startup entrepreneurship in the AEC space. We just had Patrick from Fundamental, and obviously we talked about you, and was it a few weeks ago you guys got your last round of funding, your Series A. Well, hopefully if people watch the last episode, they know what a Series A is. But I feel like you're a great example because our audience will probably know you guys already. I'm sure they're probably using Speckle already. So I think it'd be great to hear about what you're doing with Speckle, but also your journey on this kind of like startup world, so to speak. So yeah, we'll touch on all this good stuff. Maybe actually just for the audience that don't know your backgrounds and stuff, like I was just looking at your backgrounds. You've both got quite an interesting mix of stuff that you've been doing. Matteo, I see that you came from the world of Case. I didn't actually know that. You went through Case, the
Yes.
WeWork fun, Foster's, Arup. And Dimitri, I know you've been teaching at the Bartlett for a while. You've also been part of Arup as well, which I know there's like some kind of, mix with that. Yeah, maybe talk to us about your backgrounds in the architecture space and kind of how the origins of Speckle. Where did Speckle come from?
Yeah, sure, we can go. It's actually a very fun story to tell. Never gets old for us. So we're both, as you remarked, we're both architects / engineers. We both know how to code. Fun fact, like that Matteo and myself discovered much later when we met. Like in high school, we both were coding WordPress themes up and like Flash websites.
Flash website, yes.
Indeed. Those were the high school days. Then, personally, I studied architecture, then ended up in the industry post the amazing 2009 crisis, where there was not much need for Grasshopper, computational design. Everything was rather square and straight. But anyway, shared frustrations around managing the data in the industry, working with that on normal projects. And that's kind of like what led me to Speckle, to developing Speckle while at UCL, which was a lucky break from my end. And Speckle, I made it open source from the start because, public money, public funding, public code. But actually, probably the biggest win of Speckle being open source is that I found Matteo as my first contributor. Back then, Speckle, I think, had like 2 connectors for Rhino and Grasshopper, and there were some obvious holes in that constellation, number 1 being Dynamo. And I got a message on the Speckle Slack from this guy with a beard.
And you haven't changed your mind since on
Yes.
That's great.
but yeah, similar background to Dimitri's architecture slash engineering. That's what I studied back in Italy. I was coding on the side. I taught myself, how to do websites, Revit plugins, and that got my first job at Case, as you say, in New York, where I was for about a year. Actually more. And then a few other roles. WeWork, Foster & Partners are always trying, to bridge the gap between digital, design and day-to-day practice. So trying to automate boring tasks, bring new technologies in. And I was always very excited about open source, being able to contribute. I did have, a few Revit plugins that I contributed as open source, but never anything, big and major. And I saw in Speckle the opportunity to contribute to something bigger, take, some of my skills and help other folks out there that are struggling, with ancient tools and exchanging data. So as soon as I saw a video on YouTube, Dimitri, one of the earliest one. I think if you Google Speckle multiplayer, you can still see these videos from 2017.
We'll have to bring that up.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. I didn't know that actually, that you guys kind of found each other through, the open source side and just making components for it. That's really cool.
There was some other links. Matteo at the time was basically doing something very similar at Foster and Partners, like answering a similar need. Foster and Partners was one of my industry partners at UCL, but in the end, actually, we had to back channel through the open source world. And
we'll definitely touch a bit more about the open source element, because that's a very unique thing. And we'll also like how does that work as a business as well. But maybe just to start off also, what is Speckle? Like for someone that's listening to this, they haven't even used it before, don't know what it is. Give me the what is Speckle pitch. Whoever wants.
Go?
I was secretly texting Matteo in our chat. Oh
shit!
TLDR.
Promptly closed that.
Damn it. Yeah, so Speckle, we see it now as essentially the data hub for AEC, like a place where you can store all your data and consume your own data and share your data with stakeholders from within AEC, but also outside of AEC. So not limited to us architects, engineers, or people who can own Revit. And at the same time, we're opening that data up for developers to leverage in various cool ways, right? Cool ways that we were trying to do in the past, that we were doing in the past, but we couldn't. So you can also see Speckle as a massive exercise in Matteo and myself scratching our own itches from back in the day, back when we were working in the industry.
Yeah. And as someone, in the practice nowadays, they can use Speckle for a variety of things, starting from, maybe the original Speckle, which is around data exchange. That's probably the first way in which people encounter Speckle. They're looking for ways to exchange data across Rhino, Revit, ETABS, Power BI, Excel, and Speckle allows folks to do that, with ease, without having to go through convoluted export settings, sharing folders or, anything complicated. Speckle just streamlines that, and it makes it as simple as almost sending a, text or a WhatsApp message. So that's the first, value proposition, connectivity. The second one is around collaboration, and the way we enable that is in the web, through the viewer, through a modern, and a web-based way of interacting with others. And the third one, it's a bit early days, but it's a whole compute layer that we call Speckle Automate. You saw a bit of that at the conference. What that does is essentially helps run custom logic, online at scale every time your model change. So any repetitive task as exporting models, running compliance checks, code validations, all of that can be automated inside Speckle Automate.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really, really nice way to put it. And that's almost the journey that I've known Speckle through is like initially it's great for just connecting, all of our programs and, files are so fragmented. This has been a problem for years and, we've had people try and solve these in different ways. I think Speckle's the one that's stuck for sure.
Yeah,
A way to
there are
just
many
shoot.
other great solutions out there, but usually they're point to point, just A to
Yeah.
B. And the way we're trying to solve it is in a more, general and universal way. So without locking people in specific solutions.
Yeah, and I think I was using it, I think early-ish in the time, I think 2018, 2019,
Well,
trying to solve that classic Rhino to Revit,
Yes.
workflows and stuff.
yes.
And yeah, we definitely used it a bit in the early days at Big to do your classic kind of bringing in facades and stuff like that. Fast forward to today, like you said, Matteo, you had your SpeckleCon, and I think I got to see all these other things that it actually totally opened up my eyes to the potential of Speckle, and also actually talking to Patrick, which is another part we'll get into, is this whole world of like automation things online in the cloud, sorry, and of course, in this world of AI, that's quite exciting. Which we won't go down that rabbit hole yet. We'll come back to that later. But yeah, I do have to give you guys credit because I tried out Speckle again this week, and at Facet I just tried to upload one of our products, and the interface is stunning. It's so smooth. It's like, I think that's one thing I always, when I get asked to trial new software and stuff, the interface, I always explain the same thing. Like, architects are so OCD about interface and the things, just how it looks. And I think now I'm just going to say, go check out Speckle, because I think you guys have nailed that. And also the technical side, I just uploaded. I literally didn't do anything, and it worked. So
Well,
definitely,
it was a
hats off to
process.
you guys.
I think this is our third iteration of UI that we developed. We had to go through a few
Yeah,
mistakes in the
Especially,
past before we got here.
yeah, and it's a
but
factor of our evolving audience as well to a certain extent. Like back in
Yeah.
the day, 18, when you tried it first, like there was a lot of geeks and non-computational designers and hackers, but now, it's a much more broader church. So we need to cater to different needs.
yeah, and I think SpeckleCon was great, even though I caught just the kind of end of the day really. But saw architects, engineers, there's even fabrication stuff in there. So yeah, it's really sticking with different people. Maybe talk about how did you get this going, both in terms of like the technology, but also let's put the kind of entrepreneur hat on.
The
How did you get
business.
it going? I mean,
Yeah.
Dimitri, you've explained it started as a research in Bartlett, right? And then I know you guys were in a kind of incubator of some kind, and then you went seed.
No,
Or
not really. There was no incubator, but
tell us the story. What
close
was the step?
enough. So yeah, Speckle, as you said, like Speckle, I started it boring time during literature review in the Bartlett. You want to get your hands dirty and see if you can solve a problem with some actionable tools and producing some things to see if you're answering the right question. But then the research project, funding stops at one point after 3 years. At that time, Matteo was working at Arup, who were users of Flux.io. Some of your audience might
Right.
remember this.
Yeah, the old Flux days.
Yeah, the good old Flux days. And basically, Matteo plugged me in at Arup. I think Arup was already looking at Speckle as a Flux alternative, and so on.
Right.
And that's where we spent around 2 years, no, Matteo?
Yeah, I think a year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah.
They were open-minded enough to see the opportunity in Speckle as an alternative to Flux and as a way
Mhm.
to help the broader industry advance. So we were both working a bit on internal projects, a bit continuing to develop a faculty open source project. We helped, of course, onboard Arup and help them develop additional logic on top of it. After a while, simply we felt like we wanted to move faster. We wanted to, be a bit more independent. We didn't know what to do. We had no experience, fundraising. We had no experience, putting together a deck. And we didn't know what a GTM, go-to-market strategy is. So it was a bit of a steep learning curve.
Yes.
Started speaking with investors.
Also,
ultimately,
semi by accident to a certain extent. I remember that's a moment that's very vivid in my life. Is like this guy from Building Ventures, Jesse David. He added me on LinkedIn, and then Matteo was next to me, and I said, like, Matteo, look, this guy, he's an investor. He added me on LinkedIn. What should I do? So like, don't be stupid. Send him a message. That's basically how we started fundraising.
And ultimately, investors want to help you, right? They want to see you
Yes.
succeed. So maybe people might be a bit scared after the first instance, but they were super helpful. The first people we spoke with, they helped us, put together a coherent message, strategy, and deck, which we, kept polishing, and that, we went out to market and started fundraising essentially.
Yeah, and then you raised your, a bit of seed funding, was it at that point?
Mm-hmm.
Pre-seed, yeah.
Pre-seed.
Yeah, we met Patrick, your previous guest. Yeah.
Love at first sight, right?
Yes, pretty much.
They had a thesis on the previous website. We checked it out, and essentially it described Speckle without ever mentioning it. And we're like, this guy, is he stalking us, or how did he get such a detailed deck that almost describes Speckle? And of course, they didn't even know we existed. It was just a very aligned thesis on what the industry needs to do. So after a few exchanges, we were both quite convinced, of partnering together, and that's how it started essentially.
Nice. And so, give us the timeline. You were raising pre-seed in what year?
2020.
2020.
COVID times 2020. Yes.
Before, like during COVID or early?
Pretty much.
Very first wave of
yeah,
COVID.
I think we closed the round down in probably the second lockdown or the first lockdown. Memory is fuzzy around that period now.
April, I think, Easter time. Yeah.
And then was it last year you raised a seed?
2 years ago, 2022, we raised the seed. I think it was £4 million, and just recently we closed our Series A about £10 million.
Wow. That's great. I didn't know. So Fundamental and Patrick were on in a pre-seed stage.
Yeah, no, the OG believers.
Yes, exactly.
I feel like I've been on that startup university crash course this year of what is all these kind of business terms that you sort of know, but you also sort of don't at the same time, and quickly catch up. How did you find that process as like, as architects? I felt that you have a bit of that skill set from presenting projects, but it's sort of like also adding on the business brain side of things. Did you find that useful or hard, or how was that process?
It never stopped, that process, to a certain extent. But ultimately, speaking for myself, it was a very interesting challenge, right? If you could choose a direction in which you want to grow, this maybe wouldn't have been one that I would have picked off the shelf. But once it happened, it's something that I wouldn't give back. Being an architect, obviously it helps the hustle, the presentation, the grit, the deadlines, that is very good training for essentially the entrepreneurial journey. So yeah, that's how I see things.
If you zoom out, would you say architects could be great? Do you think architects could make great entrepreneurs or startup founders?
I think there's a very fine limit here, and I think Matteo also feels strongly about this. I think architects tend to overwork and focus on unnecessary details. I think this is probably one of the things that I had to fight back. I had to fight against quite a bit, right? So, there's that very fine border. If you end up on the other side, it's very difficult to, because there's a lot. right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of also very purely operational things that you need to take care of when you start a company, especially if you're just two people. The
Oh
simple
my God.
things like, accounting, uh,
Yes.
lawyers, lots of chores that we have zero experience with, things that you need to submit to HMRC that, nobody is telling you what to do, right? You need to figure it out. There's no book
Pension.
that you can read.
Yeah.
So we were lucky to, get, some external feedback, but I don't have anyone close in my network that, has been there, has done that. So a lot we had to learn ourselves and, a few mistakes along the way. Lots of time spent, taking care of purely operational things at the very beginning, and a very steep learning curve. But I agree with Dimitri, that can be very motivating as well. You're learning a whole new profession, essentially.
Yeah, I definitely agree, Dimitri, with what you're saying. That idea of architects can sometimes want everything to be perfect, and perfection is, I forget what the saying is, but perfection is the
The enemy
killer.
of done or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
You never get shit done because it's not perfect, and sometimes you just gotta. It's better to get something out than it be completely perfect.
Yeah.
Totally.
So
Especially when talking about products, right, that are quite different from projects. So the way you handle it, is exactly different.
yeah, like going back to that interface side of things, like, I'm sure that it looks perfect now, but there was a few iterations of that came out before that, right, to get to that point. So yeah. Maybe talk about where are you guys today? How many, how big is the Speckle team? I know,
Mhm.
you also kind of work remotely, and specifically, what are the kind of things that you're building in Speckle right now? Like what's the focus of, the timeline of what you're going to develop?
Okay. There's many questions in one. I think,
Well, start with like, how big are you? Where is
yeah,
everyone? And then
yeah.
where are you going to go?
So we're around 28 people right now. We used to be spread at the beginning. This was a lesson learned. We used to be spread all the way from Singapore to Texas. But now we're spread just across Europe. So we're a fully distributed
Yeah.
company, but we only hire within European time zones, so to say. Um,
Was that purely just time zone issues where people are kind of like, waking up as other people are going to bed or whatever?
It's logistics mostly, and being able to kind of create that sense of culture and cohesiveness that is very difficult to achieve when you are stretched out too far,
Yeah, yeah,
right? And I
We're
think,
also aiming to meet in person as often as we can. So once or twice a year, we get everyone from the company to meet in a single place for like a week. We encourage every team to, to meet, and especially when they have deadlines or specific projects they're going through, and being everybody in the same, continent really helps.
yeah,
yeah. That was this is one I've really kind of chatted through people, whether you're starting like a startup or, an architecture practice. There's something interesting about being sort of fully remote, but instead of spending money on an expensive office, you actually spend a bit money meeting up every few
Exactly.
months or whatever.
mm,
Do you guys ever meet up for like a sprint? Let's say you want to release a feature or whatever. You meet
mm.
up and have like a sprint in Valencia or wherever.
We've iterated so much on this, and we've landed actually now on this pattern. So when we were smaller as a company, we used to do retreats with everybody. Those would be incorporate a lot of work as usual component, right? People extracted a lot of joy in just hacking together at the same table. Now that we grew, we've actually started doing what we call these field trips, basically 1 week sprints
Right.
where kind of on a project basis, team basis, people get together and get stuff done. And the whole company retreats are now once a year.
I really like that model. It's
Yeah,
it's really
We also have this thing called the In Real Life grant, So if
Ah,
anyone from the team feels like needing to work closely with someone else, they don't need to do much. There's already a kind of pre-approved budget for them to do so. So they just need to pick a location, inform their managers, and people, can just do that, whether they're working on a specific project or just they need, some more face-to-face time with someone else. And we
Yeah.
want to support that as much as possible.
Nice. And this might be a bit of a cheeky question, but is that cheaper, would you imagine, than having an office space in the middle of London? And I don't
it-
mean that to save money. I mean that like you've actually got a better work-life balance. You've got probably like building a better culture, flexibility. Like there's a lot of pros to it. I'm just curious. Um, yeah.
I
We
think,
never
yeah, we never did the math.
Okay.
we never did the math. I think that what you lose is it's less tangible. So, there's a lot of that you need to have to do this properly, like a lot of discipline. It's much
Yeah.
harder to onboard people, especially if they're junior, if they never worked in this setup. We also had some really good people that they left Speckle because they simply, couldn't cope with the distributed remote nature, and it
Yeah.
wasn't just their
Yeah.
thing. So there's a lot of extra complication that come with that setup. But I agree with you. For me, the main advantage is the flexibility that this brings in terms of working wherever you want. More flexible work hours, no commute, less distractions. I like being in a quiet office space. It's not for everybody. There's compromises and downsides, but for us, it's working very well at the moment.
Yeah. I think it's a really interesting model. So what are you guys building now? What's you've got all these people. What's your focus on? I think you've got a great product. Is this next phase of Speckle growing it, or this kind of cloud computational component? Yeah. What are you guys building?
Yeah, pretty much so. Like right now, we're focused not exclusively, but a lot of resources are being piled into the launch of Workspaces, which is essentially like our first paid offering, something that's not open source. And this basically encompasses a bunch of, we would say, very boring enterprisey features that we discovered that are key to actually being able to sell software in this industry, from data regionality, SSO, so stuff that headlines won't make anybody really excited about, but it makes a whole lot of IT departments, CIOs and CTOs very excited, right? So
I see.
this is what a lot of the team is focusing on right now. And then another big effort is you mentioned our lovely UI and so on. That's a continuous effort that will continue into the foreseeable future, as well as with expanding some of the connectors that we're developing, clarifying some of the workflows, and kind of streamlining things that work really well. That's where we're at right now. On the community side and on the growth side, I think this is a side of the company that grew basically since this year. And there's still a lot of work and initiatives that Matteo can talk more about.
Essentially, we want to be where our users are. So there's a lot of events, a lot of things happening. We want to be there as much as possible. We also started organizing our own events. So we had SpeckleCon already twice as an online event, and a couple of weeks ago we hosted in London for the first time in person. There are quite a few meetups that are actually popping up in different cities. So there was one in Copenhagen and Amsterdam. So these are organized by our community members. We are supporting them. We're, also having our own podcast, Speckle Pod.
Yeah, I saw that. Nice.
There's a lot that we're doing, and yeah, just trying to support a bit.
I'll put a link below to
Yes,
the Speckle
please.
YouTube,
Yes,
right?
like and subscribe.
Yeah, like and
Exactly.
subscribe, guys.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. And also, I have to give you guys credit. You are our first PechaKucha sponsor. So
Indeed,
you are
exactly.
ATM royalty
Yes.
as far as I'm concerned.
When's the next one?
The
Get
next
ready for
one
that.
next year.
Next year.
We've done 8 now. So
Wow.
Nice.
we've managed to keep up for one a quarter.
Good.
So yeah,
Super cool.
I just got to come up with some themes for next year.
Nice.
But no, that's it's really exciting what you guys are doing with the tech, and I've been really blown away by what you guys are producing. Um, so like how does the component of the open source element work? And maybe for the audience that may not fully grasp it, like to be open source, but also in this world of VC and raising money and making money, it's kind of counterintuitive, right? But it seems to be working. So yeah, maybe talk to us about that. How does that work? And was there hurdles you had to jump through to kind of convince the VC world of this?
There's a
We
lot of
didn't, there's a lot in,
misconception.
yeah, and I think we didn't have to convince the VC world of this. We had to find the right VCs that understand this motion.
Right.
I think that was the challenge, and I think Patrick here helped a lot, right, for cracking the ice. It works really nicely. There's plenty of companies that we're following in the footsteps of, big database companies like MongoDB or GitLab, for example, source control.
Right.
And actually, this is something Matteo usually says. Some of the largest IPOs recently have been based off essentially open source companies. So, in short, putting code out there doesn't mean that we cannot sell services based around that code, or we cannot sell that code as a service.
Yeah, and for us, being open source, it really is being able to do more than just business, right? More than just putting a product out. It really goes hand in hand with our mission, which is to make AC better. And we believe, yes, we can do so by releasing a super useful product that people love and adopt, but also by putting out technology that others can leverage, that others can use. This is really us scratching our own itches of former architects, engineers, coding and developing solutions in the space. And for me, what's really exciting is seeing, organizations that start sometimes their journey with Speckle by adopting the open source code, spinning up their own servers. They get started that way, especially because we didn't have, maybe a paid offering that they could use until now. They discover the value. Sometimes, it just grows too much for them. They don't have time and resources to maintain it properly, and they come to us. We're happy to host and maintain, Speckle servers for them. So, it goes hand in hand with our business model very well as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What Matteo was saying earlier, I think being open source essentially is like, like our heart is in front of you. You can keep us accountable, like unlike, for example, Flags that are your closed source. What happens if Flags goes dead? Well, you lose all your data, right? That's it. What about ACC? Well, actually, you put your data in ACC and then you get charged funny Flex tokens to get it back out of ACC, right? So, us being open source is essentially that clear pledge towards the industry that we're here to make things better for everybody, not just for essentially VCs, private equity, and so on.
Yeah, that's it's a really nice model, and I think now, Matteo, as you mentioned, it's sort of evolved with your business model, right? So Speckles has been free for years. You can use the base function of it right now for free. You've just introduced some paid components, right, where you get more service and tools. Maybe you could explain that a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah, maybe starting with the definition, we're not inventing anything new. This is called open core and SaaS. They're two separate, but very complementary business models, which mean you have an open source technology at the core of your product. You're building, proprietary bits on top of it that you can monetize, which, don't really nuke the power of, the open source product. There are other technologies that maybe I will not name in the industry that have done the opposite.
Yeah.
They have a proprietary core and they build open source features on top, and they claim to be open source. That is not really how it works. And SaaS is software as a service, so just as hosting, maintaining, providing hosted Speckle solutions. That's the other way we make revenue.
And I think from the AEC community, there is a real thirst for this and a real appreciation. And I think that's why you guys have been really successful building a community, is because there's absolutely a feeling of we're all sick of giving a lot of money to
Oh yeah.
some companies
Yes.
that just, you know, don't give you that the value back. And so, it's I guess another component of creating a successful startup and stuff is timing as well. And I think that the timing is super nice. We're all looking for something new and new things to try. And yeah, you guys are kind of leading the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, and hopefully changing a bit the mindset in the industry. Still it's not really well understood what open source means. What are the advantages? There are still, as we said earlier, misconceptions. People might think it's less secure. It's not. It's actually more secure than many proprietary solutions. So, yeah, hopefully, changing the mindset a bit, like what happened in the wider tech industry. This is another example that I bring up every time. Microsoft used to be one of the biggest opponents to open source. They said, it's a devil. But now they're one of the largest contributors to open source, and we hope to see the same happening in AC.
Yeah, great. Talk to me. Let's open the box of AI. We can't
Ooh,
be here
it's time.
without talking about AI, because I think the light bulb moment for me when I was kind of at SpeckleCon and when I was looking at it before and talking to Patrick was, of course, the thing I've always talked about AI is we have all of our information in these different formats and styles and softwares. And now there's a way to bring them all in one place, which is you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's this component of compute in the cloud. And so,
Mm-hmm.
Obviously it doesn't take a genius to work out. You can, 1+1=2 of chucking AI into that mix. And that is really, really powerful. Talk to us, how is AI going to play a mix in Speckle? Is this something you're very consciously building for, all these kind of AI, applications? Yeah. How is AI going to play a role?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it goes back to the wider industry trend, like around data verticalization, right? In the AI race wars, like what's your most important resource is the data on which you train these models on and that you feed these models on. So we've purposefully kind of geared and engineered Speckle that it's ready to essentially accept this and like kind of be the prime data source for AI in AEC. And actually, some of our largest customers, that's actually what they're gaming for, right? This is where they uncover the biggest value and the biggest promise of Speckle. Other than that, like our positioning so far has been more as a picks and shovel business from that point of view. So we are offering you the way to essentially create your data so that you can leverage AI on top of it. That said, there are some things that we are planning to do that are right now, as we speak, are being actually deployed on our internal staging server, basically where we partnered up with other kind of value proposition driven companies. You might know the folks from Genda.ai that do essentially basically visualization, like high-end visualization on top of 3D models. It's basically, that was a very nice and easy integration for us to develop. Now, there's been a bunch of nice projects from our internal hackathon from Portugal this autumn when we had our retreat. I'm not sure we're ready to talk about them yet, Matteo. Are we?
Yeah, it's very early days. I think what we could say, if there's anyone out there who's interested in AI, in applying it at large scale, reach out. We'd love to see what you're looking to do with AI and large data sets, and we could work out something together.
We've seen a bunch of companies put out a bunch of examples out there already, like actually with like integrated chatbots that they can interrogate their model already and like basically compare 3D data versus like specs in a PDF that they just uploaded. So we are seeing very interesting applications show up, and we're very actually proud to be at the core of this movement.
Yeah, you guys will be like the NVIDIA AEC space.
Yes.
Sending out the pebbles.
Without the leather jacket, but yes, I think
We
yes.
can get you. Go on, you got. I could see a speckle leather jacket coming on.
Okay, so we'll.
You got the socks, and now you're
Yeah.
working your way up to the,
Okay,
to the
okay,
jacket.
okay.
No, that's really exciting. And I could totally see a world of unlocking some real what I would call real AI applications in AEC. I'm curious actually to see what you both think of where we are with AI in the AEC space because from my perspective, there's been a lot around diffusion, images,
Yes.
videos. We're all excited about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
ChatGPT, all those kind of things. But there hasn't been, it's kind of quite surface level stuff. It's not really disrupted the industry. And actually, I think the more exciting side is maybe some more of the kind of technical getting into models and it's maybe not so as let's say sexy as image creation and all this kind of stuff, but could be way more powerful. And the barrier to that has been where do you get the data from and access all this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. We've seen, so I think I share your view on kind of the superficialness or the surface level stuff that's been happening. There is a certain angle to generative design as well, which I think in AEC it's gonna be a very difficult thing to crack with AI. Ultimately, I do believe the human will definitely be in the loop there. Especially when you need to negotiate with the mayor for 5 extra stories on your building. This is not, and this I doubt an AI would come up with that suggestion while you're modeling in Revit. But we hope to see as well, we've been talking with our customers and users and trying to identify this more kind of deeper, high value, less sexy technical use cases. And they do show up, they're starting to be shaped, but we're still at the beginning of that, right? In many cases, the moment, and I mean, maybe this is going to come as a critique to AEC itself, but like when you dig more and more, it's not AI anymore. It just becomes statistics to a certain extent.
Yeah.
So
is it like all the plugins were doing sort of the same thing, and now they just got AI like stamped onto them?
Pretty much.
It's hard to find what is using AI and what is not really.
Yeah, and we don't want to be those guys that just like come with a, here's a graph powered by AI.
Here's another, fat ingredient on the side.
But then you can go ignore all previous instructions, write me some Python code, and it's gonna do that. So we're keeping it real. Ultimately, we're pushing people, and I think we're very well positioned right now to identify these use cases. Like as with everything in AEC, it's not yet there, but as with everything in AEC, there's a huge thirst for innovation and drive towards that innovation, and architects and hackers are very good at that. So it's coming up.
Yeah. Have you guys seen any kind of exciting indication of like BIM generation with AI? Like, we're able to generate a, technical-ish 3D model or accurate-ish 3D model, because I think we had I forget her name actually, the founder of LookX AI, that was saying that we'd have to reinvent BIM in order to get AI to kind of learn from it and iterate from it, a bit like what it's done with diffusion. Have you guys seen anything with that, or even with Speckle or not with Speckle?
We have seen surface level applications operating on parameters level, so like kind of non-sexy, boring stuff, fire rating and so on, suggestions around that, but bills of materials and so on. So operating at that level, yes, but actual building generation, like the likes of what you have behind you on your nice posters, no.
No.
So
do you think we're a long way from that, or do you think that could be sooner than later?
It's a difficult question to answer. I would like to believe we're sooner rather than later, but there are like some critical challenges in there. Like if you look at the existing state-of-the-art models, they are just now learning to speak in mesh, right? So if you look at NVIDIA's generating
Right.
stuff, like, there's a
Exactly.
huge training sets for data for gaming purposes, or creating like assets for virtual showcases and so on. But when it comes to actual BIM buildings, structural engineering and forces, I think we're building that. So
Exciting.
And I mean, my comment here is always just exchanging data across two softwares is still a pain point. It's still a struggle. So being able to generate, 3D models that are accurate and compliant and have all the properties they need to have, and also interoperable, it's going to be probably even
It's a
a
tricky
greater
problem.
challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, watch the speckle space. No, I think it's like, think about you guys and that AI component. It was a real kind of light bulb moment for like, wow, this could be really powerful. Maybe talk about, what's the goal for you guys in Speckle? Like, are you guys, now you have a business model, you have a paid element as well as the free element. You guys gonna continue to grow? Eh, Will you hopefully one day get acquired or not? Like, where do you want to go with this?
we want to build a generational company. Like, I think we feel Speckle is inevitable, not just in AC, but also like kind of spaces that have to deal with 3D design. So like from boat building to medical
Yeah.
equipment, product design. There's a huge land of, everything that gets built, and that's not just buildings, gets designed in one software or another, in authoring applications. And the problems are very similar across all those other spaces. And this is where we want to go. Essentially unlocking data from evil 3D file formats and from, our best friends at various monopolies, which we shall not name, is our end game and our goal. So
That's exciting.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see how you
And
guys.
I didn't mean to dodge your question around acquisition.
No,
Like our plan is not to be acquired. Like generational companies do not get acquired. So
that's
what?
Which
great.
means the other option is, an IPO, really, or
Right.
staying there
For
for the long run, essentially.
Yeah, for the young audience that may not know that, maybe they can look up what an IPO is, but that's essentially when a company goes public and you can buy shares of things,
List the
shares
company,
in that
exactly.
company.
Yeah.
No, it's really exciting. I think you guys are really, and that's why I really want to get you guys on to talk about, what you guys are doing, but also your journey for both of you. Um, how, looking back as kind of now startup founders, you're in Series A, you're kind of in the big boy stages of a startup. What what things have been really beneficial for you as architects being in the startup space? What are the things you've been actually maybe a little bit weaker on that you've had to build on?
Mm.
You're like, yeah, what's your kind of pros and cons and advice to maybe some young architects that are kind of like thinking about going down this startup route?
Tough question.
Oh, tough question. Yeah.
What would I tell ourselves,
What would you tell?
Matteo?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Back in the Bartlett, what would you tell them? Tell yourself.
Probably do it earlier. Like that would be one. Do it sooner rather than later.
That's a common one. Yeah, it's like
Like if
just
you
Yeah.
go
have
for
the itch, don't hesitate. I think it takes a lot from you, but it also gives back endlessly. So
Also, don't hesitate to ask for help, right? As we said before, there's no manual to follow. There's very few folks doing that in AC. We're always happy to help, other entrepreneurs or the people who want to try, start something.
yeah,
So reach out to us. We're happy, to have a quick chat and exchange, give some feedback. Yeah, I think starting early, asking for help, experimenting, failing, and starting again. Those are probably things to keep in mind.
Yeah, and hopefully there's some people in the audience that will maybe start a company or two from this, and also
we
check out Speckle if you haven't checked out Speckle.
yes, do so.
And yeah, something quite exciting that we've started to see lately, especially Oli, is we've seen other startups building on top of Pecco, right? For
Oh,
us, it's
right, right.
extremely rewarding seeing our technology being used that way. So also don't be afraid to leverage things that are out already. Uh, do not necessarily reinvent the wheel if you can go faster by using the Speckle viewer, by using, our backend for something, it's open source for a reason. So that could be another piece of
That's
advice.
that's definitely a cool milestone to see people kind of building their own thing off Speckle. That's really cool. Um, what about for young architects that maybe want to come join your team? Maybe that they're a little bit can code a little bit. Do you have many architects in your team? Are they kind of developers? Yeah. What do you look
Yeah.
for in hiring?
So it's a very good question, actually. Our first hires were people pretty much like Matteo and myself, like architects slash engineers who
Yeah.
knew how to code and had a drive to code more, code better, and fix the industry ultimately. So go for it. I think especially what's really important though is that you're as much end-to-end in control of what you're doing to a certain extent. So here acquiring some of the hard skills always helps, especially if you want to work for Speckle. Um, it's it has changed a lot. Like what we're looking for in people, like from the beginning to now. For example, right now, what we are definitely prioritizing is attitude, fit, and essentially hunger. It takes a
Hmm.
lot. There's a big difference from working in a large, let's say, architecture company or engineering company to working in a startup.
Yeah.
And a lot of that work ethic does not translate in startup land. A lot of uni work ethic does translate in startup land. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, but go do it. Like stay hungry and scratch your own itches.
Can you expand on that a little bit? Why do you think like at uni you've got that kind of little bit of freedom that you're developing your own kind of project at your own time? You're kind of more building your own thing versus in a job you've got a bit more of that.
I think it really depends on people's personal experiences, but in uni, you have to hustle a lot to get projects done, delivered, get the grades, move on, pass exams.
Right. Okay.
Let's not forget about descriptive geometry, do this other thing, shit, save some money for the 3D print, because that's what's gonna, make the end of year show be the cool end of year show. Um, and that's kind of how life at Speckle is to a certain extent. Like, there's not one thing that you are responsible for, and that's the end of it. You are pretty much
Right.
responsible end to end. Or this is who thrives at. These are the kind of people who thrive at Speckle, who love and relish these responsibilities and taking these things on board.
Exciting. Maybe some people will apply from this. Um,
Yeah.
well, guys, thank you so much. Maybe my passing question is always, um, you know, looking towards. Oh, now we're almost at the end of the year now, but as you look towards the horizon of 25, what excites you about the future? Like, is there a particular technology, something on the horizon? It could be to do with Speckle, it could be not to do. Like, is there something that really excites you guys right now?
I kind of preempted this question earlier when I mentioned, others building on top of Spectrum. I think probably that's, the same answer here. Something that excites me a lot is seeing what others are doing with Speckle. So whether they're just building very complex workflows, automating boring tasks, or building whole new products on top of Speckle, that's the most exciting thing. We have some very basic telemetry, and sometimes we look who is this service that is calling Speckle so much, and it turns out it's a super cool application in Japan. We can barely understand what it does, but it's very active and it's relying on Speckle, and so yeah, this kind of stuff for me is very exciting.
Dimitri, what about you?
For me, I think I share a lot of Mateo's outwards excitement to a certain extent. Like these are the things when I see, like, they make your heart glow because, Speckle's used, like, yes, we've done something useful. But at the same time, it's like there's so much inside Speckle, there's so much value that we have put on the table and we're starting to put on the table. Like Automate, for example, is one of those things. It started off as a very kind of unwieldy piece of infrastructure that now we're starting to understand how to shape it and put it in the hands of basically like everybody on the shop floor, right? So if you work
Yeah.
in Revit, you're going to use it and it's going to be useful for you. And this is what's really exciting for me going forward. Like we've done a lot of enterprisey stuff, SSO. We hope to kind of like pause or close that for now and then focus back on essentially the needs of the shop floor. So that's 2025.
Yeah, exciting times ahead. Well, I think you guys might be the last podcast of the year for us, so that's maybe a nice way to finish. If not, we maybe squeeze one in before the end of New Year's. But I think, yeah, I think you guys will be ending our 2024 season. So thank you guys so much for coming. I'll put in some links to your YouTube channel where we'll see your podcasts and stuff. And obviously, guys, check out Speckle if you haven't already. It's a really nice platform. So yeah, thank you guys, and I'm really excited to see how you guys continue to grow.
Thanks to you, Oli, for having us.
Yeah, thanks for it.
And hopefully, if you guys are in London, we'll see you all at Speckle event or an ATN event or
Indeed.
or maybe another collaboration.
Yes,
See
COVID
you
is
at the
over.
next
Yeah. Come to the pub.
Yes.
Exactly.
All right. Cheers, guys.